A client sits down and tells us her hair will not grow past her shoulders. She has said it for years. She believes it about herself the way people believe things about their own bodies. Often, her hair is growing. It is not surviving long enough to show. Those are two completely different problems, and almost nobody separates them. So let us do that today. First, two words that get used as if they mean the same thing. Density is how many hairs sit in a given area of scalp. Length is how far one single strand grows before it lets go, and whether it stays intact along the way. Different mechanisms entirely. On a healthy scalp, density can stay relatively stable because the follicle cycles are staggered. At any moment, most of your follicles are growing and only a small share are resting. So the 50 to 100 hairs you lose in a day barely register against the whole head. Hair leaves, follicles rebuild, and the number holds. Length works on a different clock. Here are the only two equations we need. Biological length potential equals follicle biology plus time. Visible achieved length equals growth plus time plus retention. The first one is largely not modifiable through ordinary hair care. A client cannot choose how long her follicles stay in their growth phase. The second one is where care does its work. She decides every single day whether the fiber her follicle is producing survives long enough to show what that follicle was capable of. Hold on to that difference. Everything else today sits underneath it. Scalp hair grows longer than hair anywhere else on the body, and the reason is time, not speed. The growth phase of a scalp follicle runs roughly 2 to 7 years. Compare that to an eyelash, which is measured in weeks. Maximum length is set primarily by how long a follicle stays in that growth phase, and only secondly by how fast it grows. That duration is largely inherited, and it works as a ceiling. The arithmetic makes it visible. A follicle that releases at 3 years produces something in the region of shoulder length. One that holds for 7 years produces something far longer. Same care, same routine, entirely different result. Anatomy, growth rate, curl pattern, trimming, and breakage all sit between the calculation and the mirror. Duration is not the only inherited variable. Measured scalp hair growth rates also differ across studied populations, and the differences are larger than many practitioners assume. In one study of adults native to Central and Western Africa, measured growth averaged 256 micrometers a day, against 396 in a Caucasian group of similar age. In centimeters, that is roughly 0.77 a month, against 1.19. The same study found lower density and a higher share of hairs resting at any given time. A much larger study across 24 ethnic groups on 5 continents reached consistent conclusions and found Asian hair growing faster than either. Now, the two things that matter more than those numbers. The first, the variation inside a group is bigger than the difference between groups. In that same African cohort, individual growth rates ran from 150 to 363 micrometers a day. The slowest and the fastest person in one group differ from each other far more than the group averages differ from each other. So these figures describe populations. They cannot predict the individual growth rate of the woman in your chair. The second, an average is not a limit. A measured trend explains why a pattern shows up across many heads. It does not tell any individual what her hair can do, and it must never be used to lower what she expects of it. Growth rate and the ability to retain that growth are separate questions. Here's the part that matters most at the chair. Terminal length is decided by whichever comes first, the end of the growth phase or the failure of the shaft. For many people, particularly when the fiber is highly textured, chemically processed, or repeatedly put under mechanical stress, the shaft fractures before the follicle is finished with it. In those cases, the ceiling is mechanical, not biological, which means the hair is growing perfectly well. It is breaking at the same point every time, so nothing ever looks longer. So what about everything people try in order to speed it up? Here is the honest answer. Growth rate is one of the least modifiable parts of this whole equation. Most established hair loss treatments are evaluated by changes in hair count, density, shaft caliber, or hair cycling. They are not evidence that a healthy hair shaft can suddenly extend several times faster. Estrogen prolongs the growth phase. Pregnancy shows it plainly. Hair holds through the third trimester, and then the shedding that turns up 2 or 3 months after delivery is the withdrawal. Menopause runs the same mechanism in reverse. Postmenopausal women have been shown to have a smaller proportion of hairs in the growth phase, and more so at the front of the scalp than the back. So a woman who could always grow to her waist may find her ceiling has genuinely moved. That is real, and no conditioner reverses it. But hormone therapy is not a hair treatment. A 2026 systematic review of 13 studies concluded that evidence does not support routinely using or menopausal hormone therapy for hair loss. The results were inconsistent, and some studies reported an increased risk of frontal fibrosing alopecia, which is a scarring hair loss at the hairline. Topical minoxidil is still the only approved treatment for female pattern hair loss. What is worth acting on is this: thyroid disease changes hair cycling, and so does androgen excess, including PCOS. Both are found with a blood test rather than a product, and both are treatable. A plateau that is thyroid driven does not need a better conditioner, it needs a workup. Before the list, one thing worth saying out loud: clients report regrowth on things the research has not confirmed, and we have watched it happen. That is not nothing. Case observation is where most hypotheses start, and dismissing it because a trial has not been run is its own kind of error. What observation cannot do is tell us why. A woman starting a new oil usually changes several things at once, and hair loss with a resolving trigger recovers on its own timeline anyway. So both things can be true. This helped her, and we do not yet know it was the treatment. Start with what has controlled evidence behind it. Rosemary oil is the surprise here. A randomized trial put 100 people with pattern hair loss on either rosemary oil or 2% minoxidil for 6 months. Nothing at 3 months in either group. By 6 months, both had significantly more hair, with no significant difference between them, and less scalp itching in the rosemary group. One trial, modest size, and against the 2% rather than the 5%. But it is the strongest controlled evidence any botanical option has. PRP is next, and people ask about it constantly. The honest answer depends on what is being treated. In androgenetic alopecia, there are systematic reviews reporting more density than placebo, though the same reviews flag how much the protocols vary, the risk of bias and signs of publication bias, and they call for better trials themselves. In scarring alopecia, the follicle has already been replaced by scar tissue, so where benefit is reported, it is reduced disease activity, not regrowth. In traction, alopecia, the regrowth reports combine PRP with microneedling, so nobody can say it was the PRP. All of it belongs to a physician. Then minoxidil, which has genuine clinical trial evidence and can affect hair cycling. It is available without a prescription in the United States, which does not mean every kind of hair loss should be self-treated. Microneedling combined with it has outperformed minoxidil alone in randomized studies, but microneedling needs proper clinical judgment. Correcting a documented nutritional deficiency and treating actual scalp disease belong in this category too. Next tier: things with limited evidence or evidence for a different condition entirely. Onion juice. The study everyone cites is real and narrower than the citation suggests. 38 people, alopecia areata, which is an autoimmune patchy hair loss, onion juice against tap water for 6 weeks, and most of the treated group regrew against a small minority of controls. That is alopecia areata, not pattern loss, and it has never been replicated. A separate randomized trial of aromatherapy oils in alopecia areata, rosemary among them, also beat carrier oil alone, promising for one diagnosis, unstudied for the others. Scalp massage, 9 men, 4 minutes a day, 24 weeks, and hair thickness went up measurably. 2 details get left out. Hair count did not change significantly, and what was measured was thickness, not length. A 2019 survey of 340 people found self-reported improvement, which is a real-world signal rather than controlled evidence. Promising, not established. PRF is plausible and unproven. And the last tier, the inversion method, hanging your head below your heart, with the claim of an inch of growth in a week. No published clinical evidence, and that rate would be roughly 10 times the commonly cited average. Head-down positioning can raise pressure inside the eye, and full inversion has been shown to raise blood pressure, which makes it particularly concerning for anyone with glaucoma or certain cardiovascular conditions. Castor oil. Let us be precise about this one, because it gets talked about carelessly in both directions. There is no controlled trial showing that castor oil grows hair. Not one. What exists is a very large number of people saying it worked for them, and that is not the same category of evidence. And castor oil does not cause hair loss. I want to say that plainly, because the internet has started saying it does. What exists is a small number of published case reports describing acute hair felting, where the hair mats into a hard tangled mass that usually cannot be combed out. In those cases, the mat had to be cut off. Case reports are not incidence rates. They tell us a thing has happened to somebody. They do not tell us how often or to whom or under what conditions. But here is why this one belongs in a conversation about length. Castor oil is thick, and it is heavy, and it does not rinse out easily. Put that on hair that is already prone to tangling, add vigorous washing and rough handling, and you have the conditions those reports describe. So the risk is not that the oil poisons your follicles. The risk is that the product meant to help you keep your length is the one that costs you inches in a single wash. No trial says it grows hair. A handful of case reports say it can felt. Weigh both of those honestly and decide for yourself. Now, let me say something that cuts against the way this section might sound so far. I have tried a lot of these myself: onion juice, rosemary oil, microneedling, scalp massage, even the inversion method. I keep going back to these because I love natural alternatives, and I always have. And actually, my hair did grow, so I'm not standing here telling you these things do not work. I watched them work on me. Then I shared all of it with friends and family. Same routine, same products, same patients. For some of them, it worked. For others, nothing happened at all. That is the whole point. One scalp, one set of genetics, one anagen phase, one routine changing several things at once. What happened on my head was never evidence of what would happen on theirs, and it is not evidence of what will happen on yours. I am not going to tell you what to put on your scalp. What I will say is this: do not let a bottle of oil stand in for the question of why your length stops where it stops. Because if the answer is breakage, or tension, or a thyroid, or an anagen phase that runs 3 years instead of 6, nothing in that bottle is going to reach it. If this is changing the way you think about hair growth, please like this video, share it with someone who has been told their hair simply will not grow, and subscribe. We have a lot more hair and scalp science coming. Now let us look at the long hair traditions people often point to, because there's something important to learn from them. It needs care, though, because the story is not quite what it looks like. The Mbalantu women of northern Namibia and southern Angola are known for Iambuvai plaits, prepared from girlhood over many years. Historical description reports long sinew strands, in some accounts reaching the ground, attached to the hair around the age of 16 and later formed into those plaits. The Red Yao women of Huangluo in China are genuinely documented for exceptionally long hair. Ethnographic fieldwork also records women saving naturally shed hairs, gathering them into bundles, and working those bundles into the hairstyle alongside their attached hair. So a photograph of an elaborate style should not automatically be read as showing only currently attached hair. Both things are true at once. And on rice water, we would separate 3 questions that usually get collapsed into one: whether it does anything measurable to the fiber, whether it affects graying, and whether either has any bearing on length. The tradition deserves respect without any of the 3 being established. What these traditions most clearly illustrate is the importance of retention. Threading, wrapping, covering, oiling, and almost no heat or chemistry. All of it does the same work. It keeps the fiber intact long enough for the follicle to approach its inherited ceiling. There is no established evidence that any of it extends the growth phase. Retention is not passive, and it is not luck. Appropriate cleansing for that particular scalp. Conditioning suited to that fiber. Less manipulation, less friction. Detangling in a way that does not tear. Protecting the oldest ends, which have been through everything the new growth has not. Managing heat and chemistry. Avoiding excessive tension. And recognizing scalp disease instead of trying to solve everything cosmetically. Some of this is measurable rather than merely sensible. Certain conditioning treatments have been shown experimentally to improve combability and protect chemically treated Afro-ethnic hair from mechanical damage. Pre-wash oiling with coconut oil has been shown to reduce protein loss from the fiber under controlled conditions. One caution, because the honest version of this does not end with admiration. Threading, protect the shaft, and load the follicle at the same time. Sustained tension, small sections at the hairline, added weight long wear intervals. Those are exactly the variables that produce traction alopecia, which starts as a mechanical and potentially reversible problem and can become scarring if it continues. So the tradition and the hazard live inside the same practice, separated only by how much tension and for how long. A style that protects the fiber can injure the root, and both can be true of the same head on the same day. When a client says her hair will not grow, the useful answer is not reassurance, and it is not a product. It is a question about which mechanism is operating. If the shaft is fracturing, the work is in handling, tension, and chemical load, and length follows without anything being added. If the follicle is releasing early, routine hair care will not correct the underlying cycle, and that finding deserves a referral when pathology is suspected. And if there is tension damage at the margin, then the fitting itself becomes part of the equation. She cannot tell those apart. That is what she is coming to us for. You cannot care your way into a 7-year growth phase, but you can care for a 7-year growing fiber so poorly that it never survives long enough to show you what the follicle was capable of. If you found this useful, take a second and like the video, follow the channel, and share it with someone who needs it. It genuinely helps this work reach the people looking for it. We are building a public record of clinical standards for hair replacement in the open. Every share puts accurate information in front of someone who has been handed folklore instead. Thank you for watching.